So for some things. I'm Ole Kauga from Kenya. I come from an organization called Impact. We specialize in advocacy and activism, but also in building social movement at the grassroots level. We are now scaled up a little bit. We now also run a small alliance, some organization called Paran, which we now support other civil society in North Kenya to help us amplify what we do. So just in Northern Kenya, a number of years ago, it was neglected, it was more or less excluded. It's more or less like it's more or less undeveloped part of Kenya. Sometimes back it was called Wastelands. It was under the Ministry of Wastelands. I don't know, it was used to be headed by somebody, George Ndoto. It was called the Ministry of Wastelands. So for so many years, Northern Rangelands was left on their own, and there also some kind of narratives during the Shifta War that was just done to suppress the voices. I mean, the divergent forces. So, but in the couple of years right now, it's the focus in Kenya. So much is happening. So much is happening in terms of the heavy government investments over pastoral lands owned by different communities, from different backgrounds, but mainly pastoralists and hunter-gatherers. So this is just we have this heavy infrastructure under the Kenya 2030 vision, where it gives a vision of how Kenya wants to develop. Basically, to talk about Northern Kenya, we talk about the equator, so we talk basically about practically about this level and then upwards all the way to the border of Kenya, Ethiopia, and Sudan. So LAPSSET is just a huge investment, infrastructural investment, what you call development corridors. It is Lamu, Port, Southern Sudan, Ethiopia corridor. These are corridors that are being developed by also we have some in Tanzania and also South Africa. It's corridors that are supposed to spur development. So others see as an opportunity, others see as a challenge, but the most important thing here is there's a lot of voices, diverse voices coming from these areas. So you'll see there's a pipeline coming where this exploration in in Turkana in Turkana is oil exploration and mining, extraction. So you need to get it to the coastal part of Kenya. So we have a pipeline, we have a railway, we have super highways. All of these mainly invested in north. Simply these open lands, the former closed areas are now open. They are not heavily populated. So the government sees as an opportunity to do development, but not really development meant to essential for those areas, but to bring, if it's we have a lot of power infrastructure coming up, but to bring them down to cities and also to support Kenyan population and that. But also to spur growth within, it's an opportunity for Kenyan government to also generate revenue. Already, it's a lot of noise because of the indebtedness Kenya has gone into over the couple of years. That's we should also, while the pastoralists, indigenous people, in this sense, indigenous peoples, it's a term of identity, self-identification, as Dr. Mwita has just said, but also it came out of a strategy by pastoralists and hunter-gatherers in Kenya, using a boomerang strategy. You go out to United Nations and other international processes, build alliances with other indigenous peoples, understand how they are doing their issues, bring them back. Up to the extent to which, in a number of Kenyan documents, there is the use of indigenous people, although there is no legal acceptance to this. But in a number of issues, in a number of reviews, Kenyan government have been intrigued by indigenous peoples to use it, especially in the review of World Bank projects and a few others. They state, oh, we are dealing with indigenous peoples. They are almost about to accept certain of them, especially hunter-gatherers, but because of their minority status. So the reason why I brought this is with this heavy infrastructure coming up, there's the issue about land, certainly, and the communal land structure is not very clear in northern Kenya. Right now we have very competing land demands for northern Kenya. Kenya has done a lot of progressive in terms of legal frameworks, policy, advocacy has been there, but implementation has not been there. So some of organizations, civil society, are coming together to more or less try and enlighten populations in these areas about what rights they are. Even if they don't have the tackling, but they have some rights because they have lived there. So that's this one major challenge, which is a challenge to indigenous peoples, but also we see conflicts emanating from these areas, and that's now the role of civil society, collectively or individually. So the LAPSSET has so many components. It has mega dams, it has oil issues, pipelines passing through the territories. It's a big corridor. It's about 50 kilometers? Yeah, it is 50 kilometers. So it's huge. So if you we have not really calculated how much land it will take up. But my organizations uses research institutions to partner with them, Sheffield, McGill, Aga Khan University, to do studies that really extract information from the youth government studies that will inform the people and about their rights and what the impacts of this will be, but also telling them about the opportunities. But often government don't see it that way. So that's just one of the huge. That's one infrastructure is a mega dam to block the river to create water for a resort city. But also you see here this is a power line all the way from Ethiopia coming through Moyale, and there's another one passing on this edge coming from northern Kenya, a place called Loyangalani. So all this is a lot of things. So let me just go to the last. That's just a view of the corridor. That's a resource city. These are pastoral lands. That's a power generated from a pastoral land. He said it's just a line idle. That's a community living by there. That's a settled community according to Lake Turkana Wind Tower. And then that's part of the pollution, all that. That shows routes, mobility of pastoralists, and we're just trying to see how pastoralists survive because of mobility, and that's their that's a part of their conservation, how to conserve their land. But what will be the situation if you really bring all that infrastructure across all these territories that we move across the Chadby? See, there will be a lot of things coming. So what are we really doing in here? Because it's a very complex issue. It's a very complex issue. There needs policy advocacy for this illegal issue. So for us, one specific situation we did about Lake Turkana, we did a study about what are the real impacts on that. And then by the time we are handling that, the project actually advanced, because one of these investments, they are huge. This one is the Lake Turkana wind power is 76 billion Kenya shillings, the biggest in Africa, and it's government, public investment, private sector. So, and they are dealing with pockets of indigenous people, Rendile, Samburu, El Molo, and Turkana. The first issue is they have to fight. So some of these things we really look for strategic engagement with the investors. We have been to Denmark dealing with talking with the investors themselves. They say, no, it's now our project, it's a Kenyan project. But occasionally we have other land demands that we've gone to court but also we liaise with other organizations to try and block these issues, and to also to just raise a profile on the impact of this to communities of this major investment. So the litigations involve a situation whereby you can have a lawyer in London to sue the investors, because in Kenya it's very difficult. It's just very difficult. I think National Justice has one success story about the coal project, which is a kind of precedence, where a fishing committee has been paid about 17.something billion Kenyan shillings, but it doesn't really stop the project. And that the intention is not to stop. The issue is about benefit. The issue about negotiating for equity and distribution of natural resources. So these are all the things we are doing, and the media is very important. Research is very important, evidence-based advocacy, because thus you can dialogue with the government when you have adequate information. But also, the space is shrinking because Kenya, the donors are shifted their base to investment. So, and they are now saying we cannot do support Kenya as a government. You have to create your own money, so we can do business with you. So traditional donors who supported human rights issues like Denmark and Netherlands are now totally dealing with issues about private flower farms, that talk about issue of tourism, those are kind of things. So you realize that space of which we used to approach in terms of strategic engagement has shrunk, but not necessarily the number of civil side. So I think I just wanted to share that, but I think we can generate a number of discussions from this because of time.
Questions for Ole? John?
2 questions. On the 50 kilometer radius across the line, what use rights are retained by pastoralists? Can they still graze in that area, or are they excluded? Number 2, what kind of negotiations went into the arrangement for royalties from the oil revenues coming out of the Lake Turkana Basin? And do you know about that negotiation and how much they ended up securing for communities, for counties, etc.?
For concessions, and in this case, because of the railway, it's not allowed.
At all?
At all. I think there's a negotiation. They'll have probably underpasses, like just like a wildlife in northern Kenya, that other organizations are negotiating for certain rights. But it's completely out because the issue about the railway is, so that one is not negotiated at all. Right now, the consultations is going on. Right now, as we speak, the consultations are still going on. We have not come to that agreement, but I am sure that's not a negotiable because of a number of things.
So just to be clear, the entire 50-kilometer corridor is off limits?
Yeah.
For grazing?
The corridor is longer than 50. It's the 50 is the width.
50 wide and
yeah,
much longer.
It's huge. You should look into the history of the Uganda Railroad, because that had not that big, but it was substantial. It was a 10-mile amount. But then they ultimately eliminated it.
I think the only thing they're negotiating right now and underpasses, where for mobility routes, but they are not talking about mobility of livestock. It's about wildlife. And also where there are populations on both sides. That's another thing that they are about ready to negotiate, but not about livestock. On the royalties, actually I don't think it's royalties. The money to the county government. I think they've been negotiating. Communities have been negotiating in Turkana and other for 30%. And last year, or early this year, I think the government accepted 10%. To go to the county government. Although I don't know, Mike, did the petroleum bill go through? Not yet, but I think that was actually, I don't know how it will be done because that was a presidential announcement. It's not backed by any law. Yeah, it's not yet, but it's just something that.
Actually, the mining bill,
There are a number of bills that are being held. Mining, petroleum, and none of them actually have gone through. There's also benefit sharing, natural resource benefit sharing, which I don't think has gone through. But this is about with the county government. And the communities are now already saying, and we've seen how the county governments are managing resources. It does not mean because it goes to the county government, it does not mean that it is its community. So they want to be clearly stated what goes to the county government and what goes to communities that are affected by in that investment.
there's a question here. Is it realistic that livestock will not cross the river lines?
Said by you say there is a question.
So,
It's not realistic. It's not that it's not real. That's according to government study reports. But we know that they've been crossing the old railway. But we don't know why it's not. It's SGR.
they actually fence the. If you look at what they've done with the standard gauge railway that they've done from Mombasa, now almost reaching Naivasha, they fenced it off.
Yes.
They literally separate neighbors.
Yes.
They take the standard gauge railway is a miniature version
Yeah,
of
yeah,
the
yeah.
serial track, and they do the railway line, which first is sometimes elevated, so actually even just crossing is a problem. But on both sides of the railway line, they fence it, and there are police protecting it. And sometimes neighbors who used to just walk to each other now have to go to particular crossing points, which sometimes are kilometers away, and they just completely transform the interactions between communities and and people.
And I think it comes to also around Kibwezi somewhere. For the first time that area got flooded because of the way they directed the flood water. So the whole area just got flooded. And I was just wondering about what you were saying about the streams flowing to the lake.
Actually,
I don't know where is
related
the
to
stream? Where is the stream from? Because
It's
not
actually
new.
directly related to the infrastructural problems, projects that have been done in upstream of Lake Magadi. And now the force water that used to flow to Lake Naivasha to go to the other side and to the environmental challenges that are described there.
Yes, so that's why the design of this project is actually fire much was streams just don't appear. You see, just the same way about what conservationists are arguing about the elephants and their roots. And because already there have already been a number of accidents with the standard gauge railway in Savo and other areas.
Yeah, but you know, I think that also has a problem with the civil society. Because the laws in Kenya, just like in Zambia, are very clear. There should have been public hearing and all the rest of it, and you would have gone to court to stop these things. We did the same for our Zambezi. They come and cheat our people that you can actually do mining in a national park. Open cast mining. Ask these chaps are environmentalists at our. Can a sassafly live in an Nchanga open pit mine? Can an elephant? But it was there. So we went to court and we have stopped it. I think we need to be a bit more. Don't wait until the thing now.
I
they're
think
facing it.
Kenya,
Because I was just going to finish that. That money is coming from international. And what we did, for instance, that company was getting its money from Western Australia, although the stock market. Obviously, they cheated. We went using Oxfam and the rest of it. The price went down. So, working with the international networks, that thing could have been stopped, can still be stopped. But you see, we need to be African civil society.
Not even when China is
No,
sponsoring the project.
not China. You see, you are building this China thing. You know, I mean, look, China is. I mean, we're dealing with
I
it.
think first of all, I think you need to. I don't know what's the role of the civil society in Zambia, but I don't think civil societies have universal suffrage. Civil societies exist to support and advance issues for the communities. The legitimacy, you draw your legitimacy from, not your registration, from the people that you are working with. And so Kenya has even more stronger laws in terms of public participation. There are quite a number of more seats. But how they are done is the issue. The other thing is Kenyan civil society are very vibrant in terms of issue of going to court, picketing. No, I think we are among the most vibrant civil society in Africa. And we've gone to court on this issue, but a number of them have been thrown because we don't have hard data in terms of support. But just a case that has been concluded about the Lamu, about the coal plant, also, and the port where all that oil goes to. You know that one because of research. They brought in a number of organizations, Katiba Institute, National Justice, Save Lamu. No, they brought in a marine ecologist, and to explain to God, because they are saying we'll pray, we'll remove mangroves, but we'll plant this amount of trees. The ecologist was able to prove that even if you plant how many thousand trees, it cannot replace the purpose of the mangroves and how the fishermen will access their food. So it's issue about access to food here. So they moved from the issue argument of civil society of land rights and issue about social justice. They moved to the basic rights issues, the right to food, and that's how they were able to win a case. And a flurry of cases are now streaming to. So I don't know.
No, that's what I'm saying.
So it's about strategy.
Yeah.
It's about the strategy, but also you need to know. You need to know that the people funding civil society are now the guys giving money for investments.
A quick one on the same. Yes, there are those laws which are very comprehensive and people try to use them as much as possible. But they use different tactics. And at the last call there, sometimes it goes to a situation like what Professor Scott was describing. They even bring their own experts who tend to sometimes to be your own colleagues to actually say that what we're trying to say, I mean, is a matter of conjecture. I mean, it's about how you see it from how I see it. And courts sometimes are under pressure to consider what is called public interest versus civil society. When that is happening, the projects are ongoing. A good case is when they were proposing to take the Standard Gauge Railway through the Nairobi National Park. This is a gazetted area, protected, world renowned. Well, civil society went to court and they were able to stop it. So they said, okay, as this issue is happening, we'll continue from the other side. What side? The other side of the park. And they started to build the railway, so anytime there's an issue, they'll jump that side and continue. So the project is ongoing with the same route, so you just know it's just a matter of time that they get the concepts that they need to get to, well, and that's exactly what is happening. So they started on the other side of the park.
You know, understand what I'm saying.
Even practical.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what
There are
you're saying.
many ways of, the point, the way you're putting is actually, you're giving up.
Well,
I mean, don't,
let me just finish.
because,
Let me just finish.
Right
One
now,
second.
Yeah.
And then, as that is happening, people are talking about how people are stalling national development projects. So you start looking like the bad guy in the public eye. And at some point you just find yourself slowly going away, not actually mentioning that you need funding to fight for these cases. So it's an uphill task. It's not as easy as
A good example,
Mm.
like Turkana Wind Power. It started a couple of years ago. Community went to court. The project is now complete, commissioned, electricity being supplied. The case is still in court.
Yeah.
And the court is a court order to stop further development outside within a specific area. You see, these are public.
No, but you
I don't
know what
know.
you're saying.
I don't think really. I want to put this challenge to
This
you.
is in a country. This is in a country where the president publicly
You know, you
calls
sound as if you
Supreme
want to be
judges
somewhere else,
nuts.
but you
No,
also
but as I'm saying to you, maybe tomorrow when we present, we are in court. A forest reserve that I represent. This president regazettes it as a Richard area. And it's all going unanswered. This fellow who has come, this Democrat state, he degazettes it and shares it with his own ministers. We go to court, he says exactly what you said. These NGOs are blah, 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 you know. But what we've done is, if you, and this is the argument, if you go as a civil society doing these things, we have a problem. One of these terrorist points is let the community themselves be empowered to defend their cases. And that is what we have done. One of the things we've done is that we brought a whole chief and 26 of a headmen, because they are now drinking fecal matter, sewage in their river. So they are the ones now who are going to court. I'm just simply saying that, the way you're putting it is that you're giving up. These things you can't give.
It's history.
You know what I'm saying?
Look at what is happening in Tanzania.
No, but you see,
It's even worse.
You know what? Here's a situation where we're at. This democracy also has its own problems. These chaps come, you convince this group of politicians that, okay, they agree, then the other, they are voted out, a new bunch of chaps come in and do the exact opposite against the law. And we can't give up. We must continue.
And that's exactly why now there's a lot of training on paralegal workers so that communities can file their own cases instead of NGOs. There's a lot of awareness happening about the LAPSET. There's a lot of things that are happening. Because that's the only person that cannot be registered, a citizen cannot be registered. Although in Kenya we've seen some guys being kicked out as non-citizen. So at least there are a number of things. It requires a lot of strategies.
Yeah.
And also the challenges of civil society, there are a number of challenges in terms of working together, aligning issues together, in terms of framing the messages together. But I think these are things that can be addressed.
I have just a question, given the title of also this session being rights-based approaches. So I have found that in a number of other issues not related to land grabbing or resource grabbing in Africa, but in other contexts, like for example, the Roma exclusion in Eastern Europe and Central Asia, they have moved. You talked about moving from a rights-based approach to essentially basic rights approach. But what you've seen often is moving away from the rights-based approach to being about smart economics as a strategy to get buy-in from the government and to make it actually sort of align with their interests to not do this, and sort of emphasize the economic implications of these decisions with a longer time frame. And I wonder if any of that kind of strategy or movement has seen itself in the context of land and resource grabbing issues. If we've seen a movement into that kind of smart economic strategy, moving away from the rights and the social justice approach to this is a really bad decision for you, the bad path to take for your economic and therefore your political future.
I don't know. I didn't really frame the session, the title of this topic, because I don't think civil society in Kenya have moved away from the rights-based approach. They have also trying to seek alternatives in the way they advance their cause. It's now how do you maximize? If you can't stop this, if you can't do this, How do you ensure that certain rights are not specific rights about issue about sacred, issue about rights to pasture, but also ensure that whatever comes out of this investment, there are certain benefits to the communities. So it's not really moving completely out of the rights the way we are doing it in Kenya, but we are moving into, during the project design, issues about dialogue. What are the possible options? And I think one of the mistakes the conservation organization did in Nairobi, they kept quiet until the railway just arrived at Nairobi National Park, because they never thought, because it's a gazetted area, they never thought it would go through the park. So, and then things were already done. And also, so for us, the issue is, while communities need to be aware about their rights and fight for that, I think there should be other avenues for them to really maximize the benefits they can get from these programs, investments. Some of which are being supported, some of which have been, we also have a problem with a number of UN agencies, because they are saying, oh, this clean energy. But clean energy or all this issue about green land grabs is creating a lot of displacement. And it's affecting about people's rights and people's right to life, actually. So I think if they are negotiated well and benefits are distributed, some of these conflict issues can be addressed and lowered down to a level where you can see it can be saved. Because they are also happening in the US and other places. We are still reading about the pipelines and all this. And I think the only difference people there are much more aware. You see, the people in Kenya, pastoralists are dispersed, they are always moving, they are struggling for survival, see, and for the basic needs. And they cannot sustain some of this without the support of civil society. They are not able to sustain some of these struggles. But the issue about rights-based approaches, and that's why they go to court. That's why they go to a number. They use media. They use all this to seek to express their dissatisfaction about this.
Caroline, I was waiting for a little while. Do you want the last words on this one, and then we'll move on?
If no one objects to having the last word, last question. So to dovetail off of Caroline's question, I think that this is, in terms of rights-based approaches, we need to think about rights for whom. Because you discussed a highway where wildlife can cross, and there are certain passages for protected species, but livestock cannot cross, right? This reminded me exactly of, I work on a mining project in Madagascar, that it's a big open pit mine for nickel and cobalt, and they've actually created lemur bridges across the roads that they've built. So lemurs is a keystone species. It's a very cute little primate with big eyes. And most people recognize Madagascar for this really cute lemur. So they built these bridges across this infrastructure, this road, but it's the first time I ever thought about these lemur bridges as being a type of infrastructure in and of itself that includes and excludes a certain form of knowledge and value of rights, you know? In that case, the lemurs have more rights than people, who are, just as I think there was a comment earlier about how infrastructure can also have an impact of decoupling people with their own way of interacting with one another and also with their own space. So I just wanted to mention that and thank you for your presentation, and we can talk at dinner because I know everyone's very tired at this point.